Good evening and welcome to today's webinar hosted by Menopause Society Pune along with Pune OBGY Society under the aegis of Indian Menopause Society. October is celebrated as World Menopause Month, and every year the Menopause Society Pune does arrange a lot of activities. This time we cannot meet each other physically, so we've decided to meet virtually, and today is one of the first series of the webinars which we are hosting as usual along with Pune OBGY Society. I am happy to say that this webinar has been accredited by ICOG by giving one credit point. And at the outset, I must thank Pune OBGY Society, President Dr. Harshad Parasnis, Secretary Dr. Ashwini Kale, and the entire team for continuing the tradition of joining hands with the Menopause Society for menopause-related activities in Pune. Uh, it's a privilege to have the president of Indian Menopause Society, Dr. Jignesh Shah, today with us. But I'm not coming between his lecture and you, and I request Dr. Harshad Parasnis to take over to introduce Dr. Jignesh, and then we will have a lecture by Dr. Jignesh Shah.
Harshad sir, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Parag. It's indeed a pleasure to be associated with Pune Menopause Society and Indian Menopause Society. And I must again thank Dr. Parag Biniwale, the president of Pune Menopause Society. As he rightly said, that we continue the tradition year and year over to have these programs in the month of October to actually create more and more awareness about the way menopause and the way menopause should be managed. Today, as it stands, we are basically, as Indians, we are a population which is very young, but in the days to come, in the years to come, we will actually be a population which will have a major chunk, which will be of the old who are more than 50 or more than 60, which has happened in Japan. And I think, therefore, it is going to be the right lecture today, that we must be prepared in a way to how to manage menopause, and for that we must know how to start a menopause clinic. And to speak on this interesting topic, none other than the Indian Menopause Society President, Dr. Jignesh Shah, is here with us. He's from Ahmedabad. He is the president of the Indian Menopause Society for the year 2021. He's been the vice president of Indian Menopause Society in the year 2017 and 18, and he has been an active participant and a promoter about how actively we should be managing menopause, because I have been actually seeing him on various platforms on speaking on all the aspects of menopause, whether it is cancer detection or whether it is management of the hormone therapies. So without further ado, I would now request Dr. Jignesh Shah to start his lecture on how to start a menopause clinic. Dr. Jignesh Shah, the stage is all yours.
So thank you very much, my friend Harshad Parasnis. Thanks to Pune Menopause Society and Pune Obstetric and Gynec Society for today's invitation, and also for organizing this 13th webinar of uh, on menopause hormone therapy, which we have planned total 25 webinars across the country to spread the uniform message about the management of menopause. Thanks to all friends, my friend Dr. Parag Biniwale, Dr. Shubhda, Dr. Vaishali, both Vaishali Biniwale is not in Parag, and also to Dr. Ashwini Kale. Now, as Dr. Parasnis rightly said, prepare for menopause. Yes, friends. Yes, very rightly said, because of the increase in the aging population. At present, about 20 crore plus women in India are living in 40 plus age group, and many of them are suffering from distressing menopausal symptoms. So we have to be prepared to start practicing menopause, and to start practicing menopause, the menopause clinic is a must. So in my presentation, we will discuss how to start a menopause clinic. But friends, don't afraid. Like to start fetal medicine practice or laparoscopy practice, you have to you have to invest in money. But in menopause practice, you just need your consulting room, one or two trained paramedical staff, and some stationaries. That's all. Nothing else is required. So before starting my presentation, uh, let me say few words about the Indian Menopause Society, because it is also with the Pune Obstetric and Gynec Society, and many of them are not knowing about the Indian Menopause Society. So this society was established in 1995, and this year is a silver jubilee year, 25th year 2020, and we have 45 branches in form of either societies or chapters spread across the country in all the states of India, and we have more than 4,000 members. Friends, since last 25 years, we are working very hard to spread awareness about the management of menopause in the public, in the paramedical person, as well as in the gynecologist. And to some extent, we have succeeded. But as far as the practice of menopause is concerned, I am sorry to say that there is a long way to go. So this year, in Silver Jubilee year, it is our aim to start maximum menopause clinic at all the menopause society members clinic. Now, how to start? That we will understand. First, why the slide is not going? Yes. So the first we will discuss why we are discussing the menopause practice in India. Are Indian women different? The answer is yes. Any patient, whether it is woman or man, they are genetically, phenotypically, and psychologically different from the others in the world. And whatever practice we are doing, that is from the knowledge derived from the textbooks, and all the trials, all the research work published in these textbooks are from the Western people and may not be applicable to all the Indian patients. So in the year 2013, Indian Menopause Society has published the guidelines to practice menopause in India, and in this year 2020, we are planning to come with the revised guideline to practice menopause in India. Now there are specific issues in India related with the menopause. First is the median age of menopause. Uh, Average Indian woman gets menopause by the age of 46.5 years compared to the 52 years in the Western woman. So Indian woman gets menopause earlier by about 6 years, and so as the menopause related complications and symptoms of the menopause. Then there is dominance of non-vasomotor symptoms, but now it has been found that when asked specific questions, they are also confirming the presence of vasomotor symptoms. Then there is high prevalence of non-communicable diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, thyroid dysfunction, and osteoporosis in Indian women. And again, the peak incidence of breast cancer and cervical cancer occur at an earlier age to an Indian woman. And we are living in a country where on one side there is dietary excess and on other sides there is dietary deficiency. So all these are specific issues and we have to keep in our mind while practicing menopause. Now, second question comes to our mind is, if it is a universal thing, if it is a natural thing, then do we need to treat menopause? And the answer is that yes, we need to treat menopause. The first answer is regarding the life expectancy. Many of you may not be knowing that before the year 1947, that is independence, the average lifespan of the Indian woman was just 35 years. And today, in 2020, it is more than 70 years. So lifespan has doubled, and so the aged woman population is also increased. So there is increase in aging population, especially in women. Then previously there were uh, joint families, but now the family traditions are eroding and woman is living in nuclear small families. Sometimes children are living out of the country or out of the state in other cities. Then these women, when compared with the women in 60s, 70s, 80s, they feel younger today and they want to remain young forever. But even after the 25 years of existence of Indian Menopause Society, there is a negligible trend personally in menopausal as well as geriatric medicine. So it is a big challenge for all of us to keep ourselves updated regarding the management of menopause. Now let us discuss as far as menopause practice is concerned in India, where do we stand? There was a survey conducted in the two villages of South Gujarat, and the inclusion criteria was women having attained menopause naturally within last 10 years and having her husband available for data collection. 100 couples were enrolled, and the conclusion was couples were found to be aware of menopause. That was positive thing. However, the symptoms arising as consequence of it seems to be accepted as natural age-related changes, and this could possibly account for not taking any active coping strategy despite reporting of mild to moderate moderation by women and awareness in both. So they were knowing about the menopause, they were knowing about the symptoms of menopause, but they were not consulting gynecologists for the relief of their menopausal symptoms, and they were accepting as age-related changes. So what we need to do, the rigorous health education and awareness about menopausal changes, it might be beneficial, and they again, it will help them to contact the gynecologist for getting relief in the menopausal symptoms. Now, again, this survey was conducted at Mahatma Gandhi Medical College, Jaipur, and it was questionnaire-based survey conducted in the gynecologists concerning attitudes, management strategies, and use of HT amongst the gynecologists. And they have found that about 70% gynecologists were currently prescribing menopause hormone therapy. 80% were familiar with controversies surrounding WHI study in 2002, and about 60% would consider using MHT for themselves. That was a good outcome, but it was limited to Jaipur metro city. Now, in this survey, it was also found that 30% of the gynecologists were using alternative therapy as first-line treatment, and 57% were using alternative therapy as an adjunct to hormone therapy. Now, regarding prevalence of symptoms, there are four types of symptoms: physical symptoms, vasomotor symptoms, psychological symptoms, and symptoms related with sexual domain, where physical symptoms, this study was a recent study in 2018 by Ganpati et al. And it was found that physical symptoms were felt highest in Indian women, 74%, followed by vasomotor 60%, psychological 44%, and symptoms related sexual domains was 26.4%. But this may be the reason that women are not coming forward to discuss the sexual symptoms with the gynecologist, and it is the gynecologist's duty to ask the direct question to the patient regarding the symptoms related with sexual domain. Now, there are some associated risks which are involved, especially in Indian geography. First risk is osteopenia and osteoporosis risk, where it has been found that up to 40% of women between 40 and 65 years, they have been detected to suffer from osteopenia. And one more striking finding was all women over 65 years have been found to have either osteopenia or osteoporosis. And this is because the low calcium intake habit starting from the adolescent period and throughout the life, there is lack of exercise at all ages and lack of exposure to sunlight. Now, one more associated risk is related with cardiovascular disease, where up to the age of menopause, the prevalence of cardiovascular diseases is more in men compared with women, that at the time of menopause and immediately after menopause, it equals in men, in both men and women. But after the age of 65, the risk and the prevalence regarding cardiovascular disease in women increases to that of men, and this is mainly because of increased prevalence of metabolic syndrome, which comprises of insulin resistance, altered glucose tolerance, diabetes, dyslipidemia, hypertension, and central obesity. One more risk is stroke risk, which increases after the menopause, and there is a higher incidence and case fatality of stroke in women as a result of fast changing lifestyles, hypertension, and diabetes, and all the non-communicable diseases. Regarding cancer associated risk of cancer, as such, menopause do not cancer, but most of the cancer occur in women between the age of 35 and 64 years, that is in the midlife age group, and the different cancers incidence prevalence that varies between the geographical areas because India is a very large country. Other relevant chronic problems are sarcopenia from lack of exercise, then again the ophthalmic diseases, orodental issues. All these add to the problems in the midlife age group of women. One more thing is prevalence of early menopause as well as premature menopause is more in Indian women, where premature menopause, that is the menopause occurring before the age of 40, is prevalence is 20%, and early menopause, that is the menopause occurring before the age of 45, the total incidence of premature menopause as well as early menopause accounts for about 35% of the menopause, and it plays a very important role in the menopausal symptoms in the development of osteopenia, osteoporosis, diabetes, hypertension, and all the complications related with the menopause. Friends, with the efforts of last 25 years, many of the gynecologists are knowing all about these things, but only few gynecologists are practicing the menopause. So in this silver jubilee year, we have decided to build a bridge between the patients and between the gynecologists, where patients are aware about the symptoms of menopause, but they are not contacting gynecologists. The gynecologists are aware about the management of menopause, but they are not taking positive interest. And truly speaking, in this COVID era, in these 6 months, initially it was an obstacle to our activities, but because of number of webinars and all these discussions related with the menopause, all our IMS members as well as FOXY members, they have started to take interest in the management of menopause, and many FOXY members have shown the interest to become the member of the Indian Menopause Society. So what is this bridge? This bridge is nothing but the dedicated menopause clinic to be established at gynecologist clinic, where you do not need anything extra, just your 2 hours per week where it should be dedicated for the menopausal patients. You need one trained staff, paramedical staff, to stationary, that's all. And it is to be remembered that there is a myth that management of menopause is equivalent to prescription of hormone therapy. But friends, it is not like that, because only 10% of the patient of the menopause require hormone therapy, and rest of them requires only therapeutic lifestyle management and the symptomatic management as and when needed. Now, the question comes to our mind is, who manages menopause? Because of lack of interest by our gynecologist friends, what is happening that even the patients with the symptoms of menopause, they are contacting physician or psychiatrist or orthopedic surgeons or endocrinologists first, and then these specialties, they cross refer the patient to us with the menopausal symptoms. But it should be remembered that the patient to whom we are treating in the adolescent age group, in the reproductive age group, and even in the menopause transition group, the same patient till senescence first should come to us for seeking the relief of any symptoms, and only if needed we should refer the patient to that specialty. And always it is to be kept in mind that menopause management is a multidisciplinary approach and it is a holistic approach. Now, let us start discussing how to manage a case of menopause. So the first step is, when in menopause, when patient steps in, take complete history and do routine complete examination, which includes the personal history, family history, past history, obstetric history, gynec history, local examination, general examination, per speculum examination, bimanual pelvic examination. Everything is to be done. Then go for the baseline investigation, go for the assessment of severity of menopausal symptoms if present, assess for comorbidities and assess for the risk, and then go for the management. How to do it, that we will discuss in next slide. First is assessment. So all the patients of 40 plus age group, these investigations are offered. First is CBC, then urine test, fasting blood sugar, HbA1c, lipid profile, TSH, pap smear, transvaginal ultrasound, as well as mammography. And further targeted investigation only if required, and if any reports are abnormal, then it is to be done. But these are the baseline investigation. Whether patients are having any symptoms or not, these things to be done for screening purpose. Now, third is assessment of the severity of the symptoms. That is to be done on menopause rating scale. It is also called as MRS scale, which is available on the internet as well as the website of the Indian Menopause Society. And there are 11 symptoms narrated. 4 symptoms are related with the physical symptoms, 4 symptoms are related with the psychosomatic symptoms, and 3 symptoms are related with the sexual dysfunction. So all these 11 symptoms, your paramedical staff can ask this to the patient, and the scoring is done as, if no symptoms, then the score is 0. If mild symptoms, score is 1. If moderate symptom, score is 2. If severe symptom, score is 3. And if very severe symptoms, score is 4. So maximum score can be 44, minimum can be 0. And if the symptoms are 16 or less, then they are called the mild symptoms. And if symptoms are more than 60, then it is called moderate to severe symptoms. And this can be done by your paramedical staff. And before the patient comes to you, this form is to be filled up by your paramedical staff. Now comes the management options. So all the patients in this age group, they should be offered the therapeutic lifestyle management option, hormone therapy only when needed, or other pharmacological therapy like SNRI, SSRI, antidepressant. Alternative therapy is to be counseled, and if patient wishes for it, it should be honored. And if there are any comorbidities present, then the reference to other specialty to be done. And it is to be remembered that hormone therapy has three most beneficial effects. First is symptomatic relief, second is in urogenital atrophy, and third is for prevention of osteopenia, osteoporosis, as well as fracture. And in patients with premature menopause and early menopause, till the age of menopause, the hormone therapy or low dose COC should be given to all the patients. Now, the physician's approach should be the patient is whether symptomatic or asymptomatic, they should be advised regarding preventive health because prevention is always better than cure. And if you can prevent the osteopenia, osteoporosis, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, then patient can live quality of life. Now, regarding preventive health, the therapeutic lifestyle management should be counseled regarding the dietary habits and nutrition, regarding the exercise, pranayam, yoga, and medications are to be offered only when needed. In the therapeutic lifestyle management, we should counsel them regarding the importance of nutrition, which are the nutrition they are supposed to take, which food they should avoid, regarding physical activity and targeted exercise. They should be advised regarding the exercise on FIT formula, that is frequency, intensity, type, time for the exercise. Then she should be advised to avoid alcohol and tobacco, regarding stress reducing strategies and importance of yoga, meditation, and pranayama. And she can be counseled to develop some hobbies, to develop emotional stability, positive attitude, family bonding, family involvement, to develop spiritual attitude, and importance of good sleep is not to be forgotten while advising about the therapeutic lifestyle management. So when you treat the menopause, you become the physician not only for the body, which we are usually doing in treating the patients, obstetric patients and infertility patients. And this is to be remembered that when you treat the menopause, you should be a physician for the body as well as physician for the soul. Should take some adhyatmic spiritual attitude. And this will be helping a lot to the patient also. Now, when you decide to give hormone therapy to the patient, there are some risk assessment modules which are available on the internet. And prior to giving hormone therapy, these modules, they should be, this is a questionnaire based modules available on internet. For breast risk, the GAIL module is available. For cardiovascular disease risk, WHO CRO module is available. For osteoporosis, OSTA module is available. And for muscle health, SARC-F module is available. And this module can be easily filled up by your paramedical staff. And if the risk assessment is high, then hormone therapy is not to be given. If it is intermediate, then it is a counseling and mutual decision between patient and the doctor. And if the risk is low, then hormone therapy can be given safely. Now, regarding hormone therapy, I think Dr. Jyoti Unni in her panel discussion will involve everything. But in a brief, I will say few things about the estrogens and progesterone. In estrogens, four types of estrogen are available in the market. First is ethinyl estradiol. Second, that ethinyl estradiol or synthetic estrogen we are not using in the management of menopause, and we are using only three estrogen. First is 17 beta estradiol. Second is estradiol valerate, and third is conjugated equine estrogen. So only these three types of estrogen we are using in the management of menopause. The only exception of these of using COC, that is limited in the patients with the premature menopause. Now, regarding the progesterone, previously we were using synthetic progesterone like medroxyprogesterone or norethistron or norgestrone, but nowadays we are using either natural micronized progesterone or dydrogesterone to treat in the treatment of menopausal patient. So these things are to be remembered. Now, how hormone therapy is to be given? If we are going for oral hormone therapy, it can be given as continuous sequential hormone therapy or continuous combined hormone therapy when uterus is present. And when uterus is not present, the patient is hysterectomized, then we should go for the continuous estrogen therapy. Now, estrogen, I have already told, either use conjugated equine estrogen or 17-beta estradiol or Valerate along with progesterone in the dose of 200 microgram for 12 to 14 days in sequential hormone therapy and in combined therapy. Both the estrogen and progesterone dose is same, where we are giving 100 microgram of natural micronized progesterone or 5 milligram of dydrogesterone as a continuous therapy. And in hysterectomized, only estrogen is to be given. Now, these following strengths are available for estrogen therapy in treating menopausal patients. Conjugated equine estrogen or Primarin available in two strengths. One is 0.3 milligram and second is 0.625 milligram. 17-beta estradiol or Estrabet is available as 1 milligram and 2 milligram tablet, and estradiol valerate is available with many companies as 1 milligram and 2 milligram doses. As per the symptoms, we have to decide the doses of the estrogen therapy. When patient cannot be given oral therapy in patients with obesity or some liver disease where we want the metabolic bypass, then here the transdermal therapy should be given, and 17-beta estradiol or estrogel is available in the Indian market, and Tibolone is also there in some specific conditions like women with sexual dysfunction or in the patients with the surgical menopause. Regarding the vaginal preparations, these preparations are available in India as cream. Conjugated equine estrogen or Primarin cream is available. Then second is estriol cream, that is Evalon cream, which is the least potent estrogen is available. And third is estriol or Evalon tablets, which can be used orally as well as vaginal. The 17-beta estradiol vaginal tablet, Vagifem, is still not available in India. But these three are available in India. But before prescribing these, when you prescribe these, you should read the literature, how to insert the cream inside the vagina, what is the dosage, what is the titration, and how to give. All these things are mentioned, and you should advise one of the staff to teach the patient how to introduce these things, this cream inside the vagina. Now, regarding the vaginal estrogen therapy, there are indications like it is the most effective in the treatment of genitourinary syndrome of menopause. Then it requires the smallest effective dose, and treatment can be continued indefinitely and intermittently. When once the symptoms disappears, you can stop the treatment, and if the relapse occurs, you can start the treatment again. And in the patients of menopause with recurrent UTI, when there are no other causes, the estrogen therapy, vaginal estrogen therapy can be given. For genitourinary syndrome of menopause, the local estrogens are based. Effective dose is very low, where it requires 70 to 90% less dose than used for vasomotor symptoms, and it is easily absorbed through atrophic epithelium, where we do need the smallest dose for maintenance, and there is no systemic absorption, so there is no risk of CA breast or thromboembolic phenomenon, and it should be started before the irreversible atrophic changes occurs. The guidelines regarding the vaginal use should be given for 2 weeks, then twice a week for 2 to 3 months. Then symptoms disappears, you can stop the treatment. If relapse occur, it can be given again. There is endometrial safety is observed up to 2 years of its use, and there are no contraindication as there is no incidence of thromboembolic phenomena, uh, cardiac disease or stroke noted along, or CA breast incidence has been noted along with his use. Now, these are the guidelines which are published by Indian Menopause Society in 2013. And this year we are coming with the revised guidelines regarding the age of menopause initiation. It should begin within 10 years of menopause or below 60 years of age. That means if the woman is getting menopause at the age of 47, she can be safely given hormone therapy up to the age of 57 years. And it is also called window of opportunity, and it supports the safe use for at least 5 years in healthy women initiating treatment before the age of 60 years. Regarding the duration of use, in patients of premature menopause and early menopause, the menopausal hormone therapy should be given up to the natural age of menopause, and then if there are any symptoms, then continuation of the hormone therapy can be given after the age of the menopause. Regarding monitoring of the hormone therapy, the pre-HT workup is must, that is the baseline investigation we have talked. Then the initial follow-up should be done after 1 month and 3 months. The annual follow-up is must in form of physical examination, all the lab tests and imaging, and discussion on lifestyle strategies, that is for the all time to all the patient to reduce the prevalence of to reduce the incidence of chronic diseases, non-communicable diseases, and there is no indication for increased mammographic or cervical screening, although the patient should be taught about the self-breast examination. Regarding osteoporosis, for prevention and treatment of osteoporosis, one can go for the hormone therapy, and especially in patients of premature or early menopause or immediately after the menopause, high risk for the development of fracture or osteoporosis should be given the option of hormone therapy. Regarding the cardiovascular diseases, if we are giving it before the age of 60 years or within 10 years of menopause, then there is no risk, or actually it lowers the risk of cardiovascular diseases. Regarding breast cancer, it was found up in the reanalysis of the WHI study that it was the medroxyprogesterone which was culprit for increased incidence of the breast cancer, and now it is suggested that if we use natural progesterone or dydrogesterone instead of medroxyprogesterone acetate, then it do not increase the risk, and if at all there is a risk, there is very small increase in the risk. So regarding hormone therapy, we should choose the right patient. Only symptomatic patients should be given the option of the hormone therapy. The rest of them do not require hormone therapy. It should be given at the right age, that is below 60 years or within 10 years of menopause. But this is not applicable to the vaginal estrogen therapy, because most of the vaginal symptoms starts after the age of 55 or 60, and here local therapy can be given. You should give the right hormone whichever is needed. If progesterone is not needed in hysterectomized patient, it should not be given. It should be given in the right dose. There should not be a fixed dose and fixed treatment policy. Every patient is a different patient. Every patient are having different symptoms, and there should be a tailor-made treatment for each patient. It should be given for the right duration, and you should not fix it for the fixed duration, like I will give it for 3 months or 6 months or 1 year. Till the symptoms subside, it should be given, and it should be given through right route, oral route, transdermal route, as well as vaginal route, whatever is needed. There are some absolute contraindication for hormone therapy, like active breast cancer, hormone receptor positive cancer, then pregnancy, undiagnosed abnormal vaginal bleeding, liver disease, venous thrombosis, or if there is increased risk of thromboembolism. In all these cases, these are hormone therapies contraindicated, and you have to be ready to stop the treatment if migraine appears, if blurring of vision appears, if jaundice appears, if there is sudden rise or very increase in the blood pressure. And it is to be remembered that hormone therapy should be stopped before 4 to 6 weeks when patient is going for some major surgery where prolonged immobilization required, like hip joint replacement or knee replacement. There are some other therapies they are required for the management of menopause, like SSRI, SNRI, antidepressant in patients with some psychological symptoms and hot flushes, Tibolone, especially in patients with sexual dysfunction and surgical menopause. Some sums are required, like then one more thing is bezidoxifene plus conjugated equine estrogen, that is also called tissue selective estrogen complex. It is not available in India, but it is very promising patient with osteoporosis with vaginal symptoms. Then one more molecule that may come in the market very soon, that is ospemifene, that is for the vaginal dryness symptoms, where patient is not wanting to go for the vaginal estrogen therapy. This is a option. It is a selective estrogen receptor modulator. Some androgen can be given in some patients. Vaginal estrogens we have already discussed. Then there is a role of lubricants and moisturizers in patients with vaginal dryness and sexual dysfunction. And we should also know about the alendronate and other bone remodeling agents like denosumab and teriparatide like drugs. Regarding alternative therapy, now previously when someone was talking about the yoga and pranayam, no one was taking it seriously. Similarly, in this COVID era, everyone is taking ukalas and these herbal therapies. Like that, alternative therapy may have a role, but we should choose the alternative therapy only if it is safe and effective with trials and if it is FDA approved and patient is opting for the alternative therapy. So friends, this is all about the management of menopause and how to start the menopause practice. So from today onwards, I request all the friends of the Pune Menopause Society as well as Pune Obstetric Gynec Society to take interest in the management of menopause and to start the menopause clinic at their own place, because it is a big challenge for all of us to treat 20 crore plus women in 40 plus age group, and many of them are having distressing menopausal symptoms, and they all want quality of life, they want to remain young, and it is to be remembered that menopause will be a main issue of public health care in very near future, and prevention and treatment of the consequences of estrogen deficiency, it will be a mandatory to all the gynecologists to understand, to learn, and to do in their practice. So underlying message is to become a menopausal practitioner. It is as interesting as treating the woman in their reproductive age for other men for our other problems. It gives you reward, satisfaction, as well as it will give you a feeling that you are doing some social work by giving them honor, by giving them quality of life, by treating their menopausal symptoms. I thank you all for the patient hearing. Namaskar.
Thank you, Dr. Jignesh. Ashwini?
Ah, thank you, Jignesh sir. It was a very, very enlightening talk wrapped up in a short time. And the very basic fact that anybody can start a menopause clinic itself was very wonderful. And we definitely at POJS Society will also try to bring in these changes. Thank you so much, sir. Over to you, Parag sir.
Yeah, thank you, Ashwini. Thank you, Harshad, and thank you, Ashwini. Dr. Jignesh, it was wonderful listening to you again, and your thoughts are definitely worth considering, and I'm sure our members who are listening to this presentation today will take inspiration from this. Thank you very much.
Yes.
We'll move on next to the panel discussion, and it's a privilege to introduce moderator of this panel, Dr. Jyoti Unni, who's who was the one who started the Pune chapter long ago in 1998, and she has been our inspiration all through as far as menopause management is concerned. Dr. Jyoti Unni currently is the director of OBGYN at Jahangir Hospital. She has been past president of Indian Menopause Society in the year 13-14, and she is patron of Menopause Society Pune. She's going to take us through the very interesting topic of menopausal hormone therapy. Over to you, Dr. Jyoti Unni.
Thank you very much, Parag. And Dr. Jignesh, thank you for that detailed discussion. And it will make the life much easier for all of us. So we'll start off right away, and we will put all the theory that Dr. Jignesh has taught us into practice in our case discussions in terms of practice when our patients are actually coming to us in the various clinics. So we have panelists here who are very, very experienced, and I'm sure you will all benefit from their guidance. Dr. Ambuja is from Hyderabad. She is the president-elect of Indian Menopause Society for 21-22. Dr. Anita Shah from Surat is the current Secretary General of the Indian Menopause Society. Dr. Sudha Sharma is from Jammu. She founded the Jammu chapter. She was the editor of the Journal of Midlife Health and is now the president of Jammu Society. Dr. Shaijas is from Kannur. He's the president of the Kannur OBGYN Society, and he is the chairperson-elect of the Midlife Management Committee of FOGSI. Dr. Vaishali Korde Nayak is the head of department in Mainbar Medical College in Talegaon. She was the clinical secretary of POGS in 2019-2020 and is the general secretary-elect for 21-22. So as Dr. Jignesh has told us all, India is the second largest country in the world in terms of number of women over 50. And in India, the natural age of menopause is approximately 46 years. And the postmenopausal women in 2010 were thought to be about 43 million, and that is slated to rise to 103 million in 2026. That is the projection. And the thing is that elderly women will outnumber men, and so it will be largely the problems of women in this elderly age group that all of us will have to face. The Indian Menopause Society's slogan of fit at 40, strong at 60, and independent at 80 is what we should all be aiming for all our patients. So now the first case we are going to discuss is a 46-year-old lady, para 2. She has come with hot flushes, night sweats, and insomnia since 12 months. Her last period was 2 months ago, but since the past year, she has been having irregular cycles lasting for 4 or 5 days with the cycle length of 40 to 90 days. There is nothing special in her past or family history. So, Dr. Ambuja, how would you like to proceed with this patient?
Thank you, Jyoti, for asking the question. Can you go back to the question first? Yeah. She's 46 years old and in the perimenopausal group. And she is a symptomatic patient. As per the history goes, there is no complication at all for this patient. Right. So she's when BMI, I think everything is normal. She is the patient fit for hormonal therapy, postmenopausal hormonal therapy.
Okay. Before the therapy, what would you actually want?
Before going to the therapy, for any patient, first physical examination, general examination of the patient, and obstetric gynec examination, including the vaginal ultrasound. Then the basic investigations are very, very necessary.
Okay.
What are the basic investigations? That is the hemoglobin, very minor things, not necessary to do any elaborate things for this patient, and blood sugar, fasting and post-lunch, and one TSH to know her thyroid levels, and lipid profile to know the condition of the patient, because this is the period where they can go in for the hypothyroidism or the lipid changes. So you
Thank
want
you,
me
Dr.
to?
Ambuja.
Yeah,
So we've examined the patient. Her BMI was 24. Her BP was 150/90. Systemic examination, there was nothing abnormal. And on pelvic examination also, there was nothing abnormal. Now, Dr. Ambuja has already told us about the routine investigations that she would like to have done. Dr. Anita, would you like to do any other investigation besides what Dr. Ambuja has mentioned? Dr. Anita, is your mic muted?
Anita, you need to unmute yourself.
Please unmute yourself, Anita.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Jyoti. Dr. Ambuja Madam has already told regarding the basic investigations. Simultaneously, as she is in a perimenopausal age, I would also like to do her clinical examination for speculum PV examination, along with that transvaginal sonography to see the status of the endometrial thickness and the condition of the ovaries. Along with that,
would you like to do an
we can do
FSH?
pap test. Sorry.
Would you like to do an FSH?
No need of doing FSH because
Okay.
as irregular cycles is also one of the very common symptoms of perimenopausal and menopausal age. So as she is having irregular cycles and she is complaining of hot flushes, night sweats like that we may consider that she is approaching menopause. So no need of doing special FSH.
Right. So FSH need not be done in all cases just to diagnose menopause. Once we know that she's in the correct age group, she has the irregularity of menstrual cycle and she has the typical vasomotor symptoms, then we can take it that it is the perimenopausal symptoms. And we need to remember that it is when estrogen levels are fluctuating wildly in the perimenopause that often the symptoms are at their worst. Once the woman has become postmenopausal and after some time when estrogen is almost non-existent, then the symptoms tend to be less than when the estrogen levels are fluctuating a lot. So all her investigations that both Dr. Ambuja and Dr. Anita has asked for were normal. And now, Dr. Sudha, what would you consider as a management option?
Since she is in perimenopausal age group and she is having symptoms also and she is having irregular cycles, so I would like to put her on low dose OC pills. That
Okay.
would take care of her irregularity and might improve her symptoms as well.
Okay. Now, when we are talking about the management of hot flushes, as Dr. Jignesh has told us, we should talk to them about lifestyle management for everyone. And for their hot flushes, before we actually start any treatment, we can also tell them some simple measures like wearing loose cotton clothing, avoiding warm drinks and hot baths, restricting alcohol and caffeine, cessation of smoking, and of course, diet and exercise. Exercise is something which has been proven in RCTs to actually reduce the number, the frequency, as well as the severity of vasomotor symptoms. One more thing to keep in mind is that women who have very severe vasomotor symptoms are sometimes also at increased risk of cardiovascular problems. So any woman who has very severe hot flushes, do keep an eye on her in terms of cardiovascular function. Now we need to treat her hypertension because we have seen that her blood pressure was 150/90. So we need to start some treatment for her hypertension. and also, if required, refer her to a physician for control of her hypertension. Dr. Shaijas, nowadays, what is the level of blood pressure where we start treatment and where we like to keep the patient's blood pressure?
Yeah. Probably 150/90 is a borderline level at this juncture of time, and one blood pressure recording may not really be enough to make us understand whether she requires a treatment or not. I think I would personally leave that to the physician to decide. As far as the complications related to hypertension are concerned, any systolic blood pressure of 160 or more would definitely increase our chances of having a hypertension related complications, as well as a diastolic blood pressure of anything more than 100 or more.
Right. So now the current guidelines are to try to keep the blood pressure at about 130/80. So earlier, even 140/90, 150/90, depending on the age, we used to say 100 plus age is okay. And systolic, we were not too worried about. But now all the associations have said to try to keep the blood pressure at 130/80 because that reduces stroke risk as well as other complications of hypertension. Now, this patient has chosen to take hormonotherapy after the counseling given by Sudha. Now, Dr. Vaishali, what drug would you like to use for this patient?
Yes, I just would like to add to that hypertension management that here even pranayam and yoga would help her to get control over it. And if she has other as we say that it's a holistic approach, so if she has some spirituality oriented things or yoga, that would definitely help her in managing the hypertension as well. Now, as she has chosen for MHT, we can go here for natural estrogens in the form of either the estriol combinations which is available like Premarin, and we need to add progesterone also here. So maybe natural progesterones we can add or dydrogesterone to that. Even we can consider ethanol validate here for this. So estradiol validate plus natural progesterone combination we can consider for her.
Right. Yeah. So we would like to give her both estrogen as well as progesterone. Yeah. Okay, Dr. Ambuja, what regime would you like to give this lady?
So, two things I want to tell you, Jyoti. One is because she is hypertensive, we can, if at all, if you are considering the low dose OCs, because no other complication is there for her, we can have a OC having the drospirenol.
Okay.
It reduces the BP1. Second thing is, always it is proved beyond doubt that natural estrogens and natural progesterones are the best. You can go for Premarin, but instead of Premarin, because it is a combination of so many compounds, we can go for the 17-beta estradiol combination that is available with the 17-beta estradiol plus dihydrogesterone. 2 milligrams 17-beta estradiol and 10 milligrams of dihydrogesterone. You can go in the cyclical form, or we can give a continuous form, 28-day cycle that is there, so that she will have a regular periods, regular cycle, and then it works out for the thing. Means because she is having hot flushes and she is only 46 years old, you can go for the 17-beta estradiol 2 milligrams plus dihydrogesterone. If you are giving second 14 days, then we can give it for 10 milligrams, or continuously with the 17 beta estradiol we are giving, we can make it as a 5 milligrams continuously throughout it is given. One thing I want to tell is progesterone is only for protection of the endometrium. The statistics what they have done recently it is produced that instead of giving progesterone in the second half of the cycle, if you give it continuously, it is going to reduce the hyperplasia and going into the carcinoma. So we can counsel the patient and give the treatment accordingly.
Okay, Dr. Anita, since this woman is perimenopausal, would you prefer to use sequential or continuous combined? You're muted, Anita.
Yeah. In this case, we can give continuous combined pills also, or we can give continuous estrogen, and for last 10 to 14 days, we can add progesterone that can be given. Or as she is having irregular cycles, sequential pills will be also helpful.
Okay, so basically, if the women are perimenopausal, it is preferable to use a sequential regime, because if we give them a continuous combined regime in the perimenopausal group, they still get a lot of breakthrough bleeding because it is not enough to override their natural cycle. So continuous combined regime is better for women who are at least 1 year after their last period. So then it gives them better, then it doesn't give them breakthrough bleeding. So in women whom we are giving hormone therapy because they are perimenopausal and have vasomotor symptoms, it's better to use a sequential regime where we should use the progesterogenic component for at least 12 days of the cycle, because it takes at least 12 days for the endometrial protection. Otherwise, if we give less than 12 days of progesterone, then it does not take care adequately of the endometrium. As everyone has said, we should try to give more of the natural progesterones or dydrogesterone because they have less androgenic side effects. Dr. Sudha, can we use tibolone in this woman?
I think tibolone would not be a good choice in her because she's not postmenopause as yet.
Right. So because she's not yet postmenopausal, it can be continuous combined. And so even tibolone, we should actually only start 1 year after the final menstrual period. So at least 12 months after the final menstrual period. Dr. Shaijas, what about raloxifene?
No.
Dr. Shaijas, are you there? Dr. Vaishali, raloxifene? Okay.
No, it should not be given because it causes hot flashes.
Yes.
Okay, so we don't want to give raloxifene to this woman because raloxifene is mainly given for osteoporosis, and because as a side effect it causes hot flushes because it acts as an estrogen antagonist in some tissues. So we should not use raloxifene in anybody with hot flushes, or again in women who are recently postmenopausal also, because it can trigger hot vasomotor symptoms. So we should wait till they are a few years after the menopause before we start raloxifene, even for protection. So now estrogens, as Dr. Jignesh has told us, women usually prefer to take it as an oral dose, a single daily dose of conjugated equine estrogen of 0.3 milligrams or 0.625 milligrams, or estradiol of 1 milligram or 2 milligrams. Now, earlier we used to start with a high dose, and after 3 to 6 months, we used to lower the dose of estrogen. But now the dictum is to start with a low dose because we know that low dose therapy is as effective. So we start with a low dose, call the woman back in about 3 months to see how she is, tell her that she should not get any unrealistic expectations of having her hot flushes go away in 1 week or 2 weeks, like if she takes antibiotics or something. She needs to take it for at least 3 months. She may notice some effect in a month, but will take about 3 months before the full effect. So there's no need to step up the dose till 3 months. And after 3 months, if she still doesn't get relief, then we can step up the dose. So earlier the dictum was start high and bring it down. Now the dictum is start low and take it up if required. Now, what about the transdermal gel? Dr. Vaishali, when would you choose the transdermal route?
If usually with the oral is contraindicated, we don't want to have the systemic side effects of that, then we choose the transdermal route. But this patient is young, 46 years old, and mainly her complaints are vasomotor. So here would be effective than transdermal.
Right. So, Dr. Ambuja, what are the advantages of the transdermal route? In this patient, of course, we would quite easily use the oral route because she does not require, she has no other problems. But what are the advantages of the transdermal route?
See, actually, transdermal route we'd like to use if the patient is very fatty or the high risk patient like smoking and high blood pressure, diabetes, all these patients, we would like to use the transdermal route. The advantages are two. One, oral route, this bypasses the hepatic circulation so that SHBG is reduced and the bioidentity of the hormone will be less. The circulating level of the estrogens will be less. That's what is the great advantage, so that the liver enzymes are not affected. So deep vein thrombosis is reduced. This is the main advantage of using the transdermal route.
Right. So in women who are obese, in women who are at risk of thrombotic episodes, in women who are hypertensive, we are worried about stroke risk. These are the patients in which we would like to use a transdermal route.
Can I just add a point?
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing about oral estrogens would be its effect on triglyceride levels, and that too is generally least with transdermal estrogen.
Right. Because of not having the hepatic first pass,
Yes.
so the effects on the lipids is much less, as Dr. Ambuja has also said. And in Indian women, where triglyceride levels are usually high, it is a good idea to consider it in women who have dyslipidemias or who are at high risk of dyslipidemias. Now, the progestrogens which used to be used earlier were the more androgenic progestrogens like MPA and norethistron acetate. But now we use the more natural progesterons like micronized progesterone, either 100 milligrams daily when we are using it in a continuous combined fashion, or 200 milligrams for at least 12 days of the month, and dydrogesterone in a dose of 10 milligrams for continuous combined or 5 milligrams for 12 days a month. Drospirenone in a dose of 0.5 milligrams is also very good, and this is, though it is what is commonly available is the drospirenone containing OC pill, there is also a drospirenone containing hormone therapy which has estradiol in it, and with drospirenone, because of its anti-aldosterone effects in women again who are hypertensive or obese, it is a good idea to use this. The other very useful thing is the LNG IUS system, because if women agree to have a LNG IUS system in place, then you can just put that in and forget about endometrial protection, because what happens is women very often realize that when they are taking progestogen, they get all the side effects of the hormone therapy in terms of the breast heaviness and the discomfort, the nausea. So what they do, they will take only the estrogen unopposed without telling you, and not take the progesterogenic component. So this is very useful, that once you put it in, you're very sure that endometrial protection is taken care of. So for women who do accept it, it's a good idea. Now, we were saying lower hormone therapy doses because there's continued efficacy. There are a lot of trials now with low dose therapy showing that it gives good vasomotor relief, and there's no compromise in the efficacy in the prevention of osteoporosis also. And there is potential for greater acceptance by women because there are less side effects. So that's why we should always start with the lower dose of hormone therapy, except in certain exceptional circumstances. Hypertension is not a contraindication for hormone therapy if the blood pressure is well controlled. There is no increase in blood pressure after starting hormone therapy. So in this woman, because she's hypertensive, those of us thinking of starting the OC pills, because of the problems with ethinyl estradiol and hypertension, this woman would ideally be better off taking hormone therapy, menopausal hormone therapy, rather than a synthetic estrogen. There is an increase in stroke risk with MHT in hypertensive women, so we should keep that in mind. And obesity further increases this risk. This woman is not obese, though she's slightly overweight from the Asian perspective because her BMI is 24. And as per the Asian guidelines, 23 is taken as the upper limit of normal for BMI. So now the second case is a 31-year-old, para 3. Her last childbirth was 6 years ago. She has backache, joint pains, and dyspareunia since 1 year. She gives a history of having had an abdominal hysterectomy for wide discharge 5 years ago by the general surgeon in the village. Now, Dr. Vaishali, how would you like to investigate this lady?
Yes, she's 31 years old and she gives history of TH done 5 years ago by a general surgeon. So not necessarily means we are not sure what has been done to ovaries, whether they observed, but she has these symptoms. We need to investigate her as the routine investigations explained before. But here I would also like to get her FSH levels done to confirm that whether she is menopausal and are these symptoms related to this.
Right. So these are the circumstances in which we would like to do an FSH, because we don't know about her ovarian status, because we know that even if her ovaries were retained, sometimes within few years, the ovarian function declines because of the compromise to the blood supply. So it's really only in certain cases like this that we need to do. If there's iatrogenic menopause, either with chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery, then we can do an FSH. Otherwise, as we decided in the first case, there's no need to do an FSH for general management of menopausal symptoms. And a BMD was done because of all her joint pains and backache, and the T-score at the lumbar spine was minus 2.8. Now, Dr. Ambuja, what treatment would you offer to this lady? Dr. Anita, could you take that question?
Yeah, I told it is Tibolon.
Okay, you want to give her Tibolon. Dr. Anita, would you like to offer her anything else?
Of course, vitamin D and calcium, all the other additives also are there. As far as the hormones is concerned, it is the Tibolon I prefer.
Okay, you would prefer Tibolon. Dr. Anita, would you like to give her Tibolon, or do you want to give her anything else?
Along with calcium, vitamin D, and advising for exercise and proper diet, we can give her hormone therapy that can be as a prevention of osteoporosis.
Okay. Dr. Sudha, what hormone would you like to give her?
Since she is premature surgical menopause and FSH has gone, that means she's gone into premature surgical menopause, and at the same time she is osteoporotic also because the T-score is less. So I would like to give her conjugated equine estrogen, standard therapy, 0.6 to 5 milligrams per day, no uterus, so no progestogen to be added, because that will take care of her symptoms as well as that will increase the BMD and take care of her bones as well. Also, along with this, as said by Dr. Anita, calcium, vitamin D, exercises, they has to be added along with this. And this treatment has to be continued till the natural age of pass in this patient.
Right. So, exercise, calcium, and vitamin D we should give her. We could take an orthopedic opinion. And as far as hormone therapy is concerned, some of the panelists would like to use estrogen, some would like to use Tibolon. So now in this young woman, estrogen is fine. And as Dr. Sudha has said, we can give her conjugated equine estrogen or estradiol. It doesn't have to be conjugated equine estrogen, but whatever estrogen we give her, we should give her in the standard dose. And since she's had her since she has already had her uterus removed, we don't need to give her progestogen. So now, besides the uterus being removed, is there any other reason why you would not give her progestogen, Dr. Shaijas? Dr. Shaijas, are you there? Dr. Vaishali?
Definitely the uterus is not there, so the effect of estrogen or unopposed action of estrogen on the endometrium. So we don't have to give progesterone here.
Okay. So now, besides the fact that hysterectomy is done, so we don't have to worry about the endometrium, the other thing is that the breast cancer risk increases with progestogen. All this time, we used to think that it was the estrogen which increased the breast cancer risk. But from the time of WHO, which is now more than 10, 12 years, the results have come out. We know that it is the progestogenic component which increases the breast cancer risk. So in a woman who has had a hysterectomy, unless the hysterectomy was done for endometriosis, and we are worried that there may be a recurrence of some small deposits which we've left behind, even if we've removed her ovaries, or if she has deep rectal endometriosis, etc., she could have a flare-up. That's why we would give progestogen. Otherwise, we would not expose a woman to progestogen because it also increases her breast cancer risk. Similarly, in women who we can give less amount of progestogen, that means we can give them sequential progestogen, we should give them that because the studies have shown that the women who had 12 days, that means both in the WHI as well as the Million Women study, we know that women who have had less amount of progestogen, their breast cancer risk is lower than women who have had it for longer time. That is why, as you would have noticed, whenever we are giving the progestogen continuously, because obviously women who are postmenopausal, most of them would not want to have their periods again. So we do give them continuous combined so that they don't get a period. But we should lower the dose of progestogen at that time so that the overall quantity of progestogen that they're getting is slightly less. Tibolone we've already talked about. Dr. Ambuja had said that she prefers tibolone. Now, tibolone can be given, but essentially we can retain tibolone for a little later, give her estrogen initially, and like Dr. Sudha said, give a standard dose. So women with premature ovarian insufficiency or premature menopause, iatrogenic, we should give them standard dose and not low doses because they need the standard doses for their bone health and cardiovascular. Tibolone a few years later. What about bisphosphonates? Dr. Shaijas, would you like to give this lady bisphosphonates?
For the time being, I would just stick on to the menopausal hormone therapy alone and probably reassess her a bit later. For the time being, I don't think there's an indication to start a combination along with estrogens.
Right. So we don't need to give her bisphosphonates so early. Bisphosphonates have their own problems. They also cause problems. We can't just give it forever. So it's a good idea to keep all these other therapies to be given later once we have given her conventional hormone therapy for some time, so estrogen therapy, then we could change to tibolone. And then when she needs more effect for her bone health, we could give her bisphosphonates because they are not without risk either. So we should give them only to slightly older women.
And one side effect that is generally seen with bisphosphonates is musculoskeletal pain. So somebody who's already suffering from joint pains and all that might actually feel it a little bit more.
Right. So besides the bisphosphonates have got very bad symptoms of gastroesophageal reflux. So we have to tell them to remain in an upright position after having them. But they can also cause avascular necrosis of the jaw and some atypical fractures of the femur. And so we should be aware of all this and not think that bisphosphonates are without risk. Now, for how long would you give her? This has already been answered by Dr. Sudha, that until the natural age of menopause, we would give her estrogen therapy. Now, Dr. Ambuja, how would you follow her up?
Once we start any of the hormones, ask her to come after 3 months. As already I have examined the physical examination and all I have done, but still I'd like to see her because of her hormone therapy, any problem she's having, or breast problems or the uterus also. Doing a pelvic examination, I can see the uterus. It is not a mandatory to do the pelvic examination unless she complains anything. Otherwise, to see and ask for any problem, especially about the, she's 150/90 blood pressure, all the other checkup we can do and send her. The next is yearly checkup for the patient because she is going to take the things. What about the mammogram? It is not right away, it is not necessary. The self-breast examination and the examination by the clinician once a year, it is more than enough. Once the patient reaches around about 50 years, that is the mammogram is necessary. In India, we have reduced the age of doing the mammogram. It is for the 40 years because she is not giving any history, family history of anybody having the breast cancer instance. For a normal person, round about 50 years is enough. Once in 5 years.
Right. So basically, this woman needs to be seen after 3 months to check about hormone therapy. And then annually, we must check, keep an eye on her blood pressure, do the general examination, systemic examination, do any blood investigations that are required. Mammography, as Dr. Ambuja has said, we do not need to start until the routine screening time, which in India is about 40 years, because the incidence of breast cancer is earlier in our Indian women. The highest incidence is between 40 and 50, unlike Western women where it starts after 50. But her individual risk of breast cancer due to hormone therapy actually increases only after the natural age of menopause of 50 years. So we need not start doing breast screening early just because we've put her on estrogens. The problem is basically that if we've given her estrogens for a long time, the breast density may also increase. So we might want to do a breast ultrasound if the breasts are very dense. And routinely, not in this woman, if a woman has a family history of breast cancer, we want to start the breast screening by mammography 10 years before the first degree family relative had it. So if a mother or sister has it, then we start. Otherwise, routine breast screening in women in whom we are starting therapy early due to premature menopause, we need not start mammography screening. So hormone therapy is the appropriate first-line therapy for women under the age of 60 with an increased risk of fracture. Once the hormone therapy is stopped, the protective effect declines. And after 60, hormone therapy is second line because the benefits, the risks are greater than the benefits after 60. And this should be based on individual risk or benefit. For premature ovarian insufficiency, premature menopause, iatrogenic menopause, early, this is what we've been saying, there's an increased risk of long-term consequences, and systemic hormone therapy should be offered to all women till the natural age of menopause. We can give them conjugated, combined oral contraceptive pills, but in this woman, since she doesn't have a uterus, she doesn't need the progesterones, so we can give her just estrogens, and we should give them regular doses, not low doses. Now, ospemifene, this woman also had some vaginal atrophy. So when we were giving her systemic estrogen, she would have had benefits of the systemic estrogen on her vaginal health also. But just for the dyspareunia, we could use ospemifene, which is a third generation SERM, which has an estrogenic agonistic effect on the vagina, and it's approved for the use in dyspareunia. It also increases BMD with no effect on the breast and endometrium, and it is used in a 60 milligram oral dose daily. It can cause hot flushes and increases the risk of DVT, so we should be aware of that. But since this woman is young and ambulatory, there's no problem. And some women do not like to use vaginal preparations. So ospermifene is an option for those women. Now, before we move on to the next case, I would just like to tell the delegates that we are hoping to have a little time for questions at the end of the panel. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. Now, this 51-year-old lady presents with complaints of recurrent urinary infections. She's had amenorrhea since 18 months. She's gained 5 kilos of weight in the last 6 months. She's complaining of lethargy and fatigue all the time. Vaishali, what would be your provisional diagnosis in this woman?
I would like to rule out hypothyroidism in this patient.
Okay. And Anita, are there any differential diagnoses in her?
Diabetes also, because in diabetic patient, recurrent urinary tract infection is very common. So
Right.
we have to rule out diabetes also by doing her fasting as well as PPVS.
Okay. So now,
Probably not to forget is the
yeah, Shaijan?
yeah, and probably not to forget is the genitourinary syndrome of menopause.
Right. So we need to keep the options, the diagnosis of all these things in mind and do a thorough general and systemic examination and vaginal examination. So she has a BMI of 28 and her vagina is atrophic. So they've already told us, Anita and Sudha, what investigations we want to do. So these are the investigation reports. Her fasting sugar is 165. She has a PP sugar of 270. Her urine has not shown any problem, no growth either. Her TSH is 16. Her uterus is normal sized with an EP of 4 millimeters. So, Sudha, what treatment would you like to offer this patient?
Since it's postmenopausal with recurrent UTIs, first of all, and then she has increased weight in last 6 months. So the most important thing is I would like to see her lifestyle first, and I have to tell her to change her lifestyle, because in menopause we all know that the basic resting metabolic rate goes down and the caloric requirement goes down. With each decade, after 30 years, there is 10% decrease in the caloric requirement. So if we keep the same mobility level, if she is not mobile, if she is not active, and she is eating the same, very likely she is going to put on weight. Number two, she is diabetic also. So the lifestyle modification has to be done in that. Exercise and this diet modification has to be done, in which she has to cut down on the fats, proteins 20% and carbohydrates, less of sugar and salt and everything. And then for urinary tract infections, I would like to see her urine examination and urine culture. If
urine culture is no growth.
No growth. So recurrent UTIs, we can give urinary antibiotics, low dosages for prolonged period, number one. Number two, we can give local estrogens also, because that will help in the pH of the vagina, that will help in decreasing her urinary tract infections.
Right. So local estrogens are very effective for the local vaginal atrophy, and they also reduce the recurrent urinary tract infections. Antibiotics, if the culture is not showing any organism, we should restrict the use of antibiotics, because otherwise we tend to create antibiotic resistance. So just based on the patient's symptoms, this case teaches us that we should not just prescribe antibiotics based on her treatment. We must examine her, investigate her, and as the panelists have brought out, her recurrent UTI as well as her frequency, all that can be due to diabetes, which it was in this patient.
TSH was 16, right, madam? TSH was 16, right? TSH levels were 16, right?
TSH was 16.
That also need to be dealt with.
So we need to address her hypothyroidism also. So if we are practicing somewhere where there is an endocrinologist or a physician, it would be a good practice to have multidisciplinary care rather than to treat her ourselves. So we could refer her to either the endocrinologist or the physician to help us treat her hypothyroidism and her diabetes, because just giving her local estrogens is not going to take care of the rest of the problems. So estrogen therapy is the most effective option for vaginal atrophy. And when hormone therapy is considered solely for this indication, we don't need to give them systemic therapy with all its risks. We should give them just vaginal therapy. And it benefits women with urge incontinence and also reduces the risks of recurrent UTI, because the bladder also has estrogen receptors. However, estrogen therapy should not be used in women with stress incontinence, because that aggravates stress incontinence. So this is something we should keep in mind for these women. As far as diabetes is concerned, there's no contraindication to hormone therapy. In fact, hormone therapy reduces fasting glucose and increases insulin sensitivity. It also reduces abdominal fat. And in women who don't have diabetes already, it reduces the development of type 2 diabetes. So the
Can I
next
just add a point there, madam?
Yeah, Shaiji.
Most of these women with vaginal atrophy on examination who have come to you only with a recurrent UTI, on a leading question, they might have sexual problems also. So that also need to be considered, and even the non-hormonal kind of treatment, including vaginal moisturizers, water-based lubricants, and also need to be considered in such women where a leading question can be asked. They might not be coming out with that problem straight away. So that also need to be addressed, because that's generally a part of the syndrome called GUSM.
Yes. Okay. So we must remember to ask questions in women about their dyspareunia, about their loss of libido. Sometimes women even have urinary incontinence but don't talk about it. So we have to ask leading questions, though as medical students, we are taught not to ask leading questions. There is a time and place for leading questions, yes, and this is one of them. So this is a 46-year-old, Tara 2. She's breastfed both her children. She complains of mood changes, loss of libido since 6 months, and her last period was a year ago. She gives history of premenstrual breast pain. She had a breast lump which was operated 3 years ago, and it was benign. Her mammography shows that she has dense breasts. Now, Dr. Anita, would you offer this lady hormone therapy?
Yeah, she's having last period before 1 year, so she's a postmenopausal lady and complaining of mood changes and loss of libido. I think we can offer her hormone therapy.
Okay.
Can I just add a point?
Yeah, Dr. Shaiji.
Yeah. Now, a little bit of a difference of opinion here. Now, if you actually go by the sexual cycle response theory, which is actually put forward by Masters and Johnson with their legendary work in the 1950s and 60s, this loss of desire, which is always called as loss of libido, primarily is a problem related to your testosterone levels much more than your estrogen levels. So that is one aspect that you also need to consider. But then there is another reason why an estrogen also need to be supplemented here, because they found that women is an exception to the classical sexual response cycle theory, which is put forward by Masters and Johnson. The theory was that the desire comes first, arousal happens next, and then they reach orgasm. And it seems there are a lot of women who are actually approached for sex, and she's actually aroused or stimulated, and then she develops the desire to actually have sex. So that would mean that a local estrogen therapy to improve the arousal by improving the blood supply to her genital organs and her vagina actually can improve arousal and thereby actually increase the libido factor. Thank you, madam.
Okay. So now you offered her hormone therapy, but she said her close friend had breast cancer. She was afraid that her lump would recur or that she would get cancer. So she declined hormone therapy. So, Dr. Ambuja, what would you advise her now? Dr. Ambuja? Okay.
Scope to counsel her and make her understand that the local estrogen therapy is not actually a contraindication to her friend having breast cancer and her worry
Okay.
about a breast cancer.
She has mood changes also, so local estrogen therapy is not going to help.
No.
But the androgenic action of tibolone would help her. So can we go for tibolone here?
Okay, so when she says tibolone also comes under the gamut of hormone therapy. So she does not want to take any hormones. So if she doesn't want to take any hormones, what would you like to give her, Dr. Vaishali?
As Dr. Sabdu said, estriol cream would help her reduce
It's not going to help her mood changes.
Yeah, the mood changes. I felt that androgen would help you. Androgenic action would help you as the testosterone she would need.
Right, but if she doesn't want hormones, then can we offer her anything else?
Can I add? Can we give her alternate
venlafaxine.
and paroxetine, which has been approved by FDA, or venlafaxine, 7.5 milligrams. We have 2 milligram tablets with us.
So she was put on venlafaxine for 6 months. So now venlafaxine is given usually in a dose of 37.5 milligrams at bedtime to start with, and if it's required, you can increase it to 75 milligrams or give it twice a day. But she took it for 6 months and she was unhappy with the relief. So what would you do now? Dr. Ambuja, are you still there? Dr. Ambuja? Okay, Dr. Anita, can you please take this question?
As she is not ready with, she is not ready with the hormone therapy and she is not happy with venlafaxine. We can try the alternative therapy like isoflavone or.
How about
gabapentin?
So now, as Dr. Shaijas had said, we can counsel her again once she has.
I would also counsel her
for 6 months, and she is not happy with it. Maybe now she might be willing to take hormone therapy. So you could counsel her again, start all over again, and explain to her the benefits that she would get with hormone therapy. And as everyone has said, because she has mood and libido problems, tibolone or androgen would be something which would be good for her. Tibolone is good because it has androgenic action also. And androgens, the female preparations are not available in India. But the International Menopause Society has now said that if you don't have the female preparations available, with caution in low doses, you could use the male preparations for problems of mood and libido. But tibolone is a very good alternative to use in this case. Now, tibolone is used in a 2.5 milligram daily dose orally. That is the preparation that is available. But 1.25 milligrams is equally effective. The mood and libido is well addressed due to the androgenic action that tibolone has in its inherent molecule. And it does not alter the mammographic density. So it is a big advantage in terms of follow-up of these women. So benign breast disease is not a contraindication to hormone therapy. So though this woman has had a fibroadenoma, we need not deny her hormone therapy because that is not a contraindication. And the risk of breast cancer attributable to hormone therapy is very rare. It's less than 1 per 1,000 women per year of use. And women who do develop breast cancer while on hormone therapy, which usually occurs only after 5 years of continuous use, have better survival rates than those not on hormone therapy, maybe because of the type of cancer that develops or because of the increased surveillance. So Parag, do we have time for one more case?
Yes, Jyoti, we can have one more case.
So just very quickly, 60-year-old CABG for coronary artery disease 2 years ago, complains of night sweats, nocturia, frequency, urgency, joint pains and backache. Urine routine and culture are. Now, please remember that even with a routine showing pus cells of 15 to 20, we should not jump to the conclusion that she has a urinary infection. We must document it on a culture. And if the epithelial cells are more than the pus cells, then it's very likely that she doesn't actually have an infection. So have a look at the epithelial cells also, and you can of course look at leukocyte esterase and bacteria in the urine routine. And if at all you have started an antibiotic and the culture comes back as no growth, then please stop it. There's no need to complete the course of the antibiotic. Her blood sugars are essentially normal. Her BMD shows osteopenia. She was on hormone therapy before surgery. She wants to go back on it now. So what would you do? Dr. Ambuja, are you there? Dr. Ambuja is probably not there. Anita, would you like to give this woman hormone therapy? Sudha?
No, I will not give her hormone therapy since she is
She's 60 years.
heart disease treated, and there is no indication that no hormone therapy for even primary or secondary this disease. So I would like to go for alternate therapies, or at the most I can give local estrogen therapy.
Okay, so nobody wants to give her estrogens because she is over the age of 60 as well as she has had a coronary artery disease. So we could give her vaginal estrogens for her local symptoms, and we could give her SNRIs. And because she has urgency, we can give her anticholinergics as long as she does not have any acute angle glaucoma. Now, in women, now mirabegron is coming up in a big way, but in women who have coronary artery disease or cardiac problems, we should not give them mirabegron. The traditional anticholinergics are the way to go. And we should refer her to an orthopedic surgeon because she is having problems in terms of her joint health, calcium and vitamin D supplements, of course. And this is the patient in whom we can give bisphosphonates, but we should give her bisphosphonates only explaining to her that she should take it on an empty stomach first thing in the morning. And after that, she should sit upright for at least 1 hour because elderly people tend to lie down immediately after waking up and having something to eat and drink. So we should tell her about all these things. So there's no role for hormone therapy for secondary prevention of cardiovascular disease. Secondary prevention should be by non-hormonal methods. So the clinical practice guidelines of the Indian Menopause Society, which have recently been updated, still say that hormone therapy is the most effective for vasomotor symptoms, lowest effective dose, and for the duration that is required. The shortest duration has gone out now, and as Dr. Jignesh has also said, we have to assess the woman and decide how long, and there's no point in giving it for less than 6 months. Even if you're giving for a short duration, it's usually about 2 years. And the safety largely depends on the age of the woman and the time since menopause. So within 10 years of menopause or before the age of 60. Vaginal estrogen is most effective for urogenital atrophy, and hormone therapy may be used for prevention and treatment of osteoporosis, but should be initiated within 10 years of menopause. Hormone therapy should be offered to all women with premature ovarian insufficiency till the natural age of menopause. The some of the statements which were revised by International Menopause Society in their global consensus of 2016 compared to their 2013 version was that tibolone and TSEC, the conjugated equine estrogen with vasodoxifin, has also been included in the options which are most effective for vasomotor symptoms. The risk attributable to MHT is rare, and MHT initiated early in menopause has no substantial effect on cognition but may prevent Alzheimer's in later life. Just one word about the TSEC. It is a tissue selective estrogen complex, which is a combination of a SERM with estrogen to provide efficacy of both components with fewer adverse effects. It has 20 milligrams of vasodoxifin with conjugated equine estrogen of 0.45 milligrams. It's not available in India yet, but we hope that it will come soon because it has been shown in the studies so far that it has fewer adverse effects than conventional therapy. So our aim should be to help patients make informed choices, individualize the treatment, and offer them the full range of effective choices, both behavioral as well as pharmacological. So thank you very much. And before we end the panel, Parag, if we have time and if there are any questions, you could just put them to any of the panelists.
We have only 2 questions. And what is the regime for local estrogen therapy? Can Vaishali take this question?
Parag, please come again. Local estrogen therapy.
Yeah. What is the regimen for local estrogen therapy?
So we mean to say the estriol cream we can give 0.5 or 1 milligram. Even we have transdermal patches which we can use. There is a lot of disturbance. I'm not sure whether.
Okay, Parag, shall I just quickly take that?
Yeah, I think Jyoti, you can take that. There's some issue with Vaishali's connection, I suppose.
Yeah. Now, basically, usually we give local estrogen therapy as a daily dosage at bedtime for the first 14 days. And after that, you give it twice a week for up to 3 months. Assess the woman after 3 months, and you can give it continuously for up to 12 months. If the vulvovaginal atrophy is a lot, then you can actually give it to her continuously for, you can give it to her for 12 months, twice a week. But if it isn't a lot, then after 3 months, you can stop it. And if it recurs, which it is bound to recur after a few months, you can put her back on it.
Okay. Jyoti, that answers the second question also. And the third question is why breast cancer is more seen after menopause. This is actually not related to the panel, but
Shall I answer?
yes, madam.
See, as it is, breast cancer is not increased after menopause. As the age advances, the incidence of breast cancer increases, that only is increasing. Unless there is a progesterone, it is added. Where the synthetic progesterone is added to protect the endometrium. For a long time, it is taken as hydroxyprogesterone acetate, or if you have got the family history, a person affected below 35 years have got a predilection for higher incidence of cancer. Otherwise, breast cancer is not increased in menopause.
Thank you, Dr. Ambuja. Shubhada, are you there?
Yep.
Yeah. So can we?
Can you hear me? Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, Shubhada.
I would like to propose the vote of thanks. First of all, I would like to thank our central body, Shah and Dr. Vebinar. So would like to congratulate him on behalf of Pune organizing so difficult COVID. Also, to thank academic partners, POGS, Parasnis, and Dr. Ini. I think Dr. Parag already said that we always work together, and I'm sure we'll continue to do so. I would like to thank Dr. Jyoti Unni, who has conducted Dr. Ambuja, Dr. Isha Shah, Dr. Saiju. I think all the answers, all the gynecologists want to practice menopause as a specialist, all their practical questions on MHT are answered for their day-to-day. I would also like to thank ICOG for granting ICOG point and our team for the logistic support for this organizing webinar. And of course, all the delegates, I would like to thank them for joining in on Sunday evening and spending their time to listen to all the faculty. Thank you very much.
So thank you all for joining, and hope to see you soon. We have another webinar coming up on the 8th of October, so do join us again. Thank you very much and have a great evening.